Assalamualaikum.
I have a story to share. It's not a scary one, but anyway, here goes. This happened during Hari Raya Aidilfitri. It was a last-minute plan. My family and I had to stay in a hotel that night because our last visit to a friend's open house finished a bit late. We were in Ipoh. We called all the hotels in Ipoh, and we found just one hotel with rooms available. Mine was on the 7th floor, if I'm not mistaken. The other two rooms were on different floors. The hotel doesn't provide irons for rooms. You have to iron in the hallway. My wife wanted to iron our clothes at night because she didn't want to have to rush the next morning, as we had to hurry to another open house. So my son and I followed my wife to go do the ironing because she was scared to be alone. At the end of the hallway there was a door that led to the stairs. I was just playing with my son, but my son kept getting distracted by the door. He kept looking at the door, even though I tried to distract him with something else. All of a sudden, the door slammed open. I kid you not, it opened like it was pushed with full force. Inside it was dark, the lights weren't on, but I swear as the door opened, I caught a glimpse of a black figure before it disappeared. My wife was scared, and my son was too. Honestly, I was scared as well, but just to keep my family calm, I put on a brave front. My wife asked what happened, and I just said it was the wind from the stair area that pulled the door open. I went to the door and closed it, fast. But seriously, I was actually scared stiff. Nothing else happened that night, but the next morning, I wanted to have my morning smoke, so I went into that stair area. I walked 2 stairs up and 2 stairs down. I did not find any windows. Either someone opened a door on another floor and the pressure of the wind caused the door to open abruptly, or there was something else. The name of the hotel is Excelsior, Ipoh. It's an old hotel. This story I'm going to tell is about a hotel in Kuala Lumpur. It's pretty famous if you know the hotels well enough. It's one of the more popular ones, which comes with a kitchen and a huge bathroom in the Golden Triangle, with a pretty huge forest reserve right next to it. After finishing work at about 1 AM, I decided to call it a night. I turned off my laptop, made sure my iPad was in sleeping mode, and crawled into bed. At about 3 AM, I woke up to my phone lighting up, like I was getting a phone call or an alarm was ringing. I took it, but there was nothing. Feeling it was just an isolated incident, I placed my phone down next to my bed. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed the screen on the iPad beginning to power on and off a few times, not just once. This was strange as it was always off. At this point, I sat up at the corner of the bed, but directly ahead of me, I noticed the TV was doing the same thing. The lights were coming on and off in no specific order. At this point, I was a bit freaked out, so I turned on all the lights with the master switch, and everything was back to normal. About 5 minutes or so later, I got back under my blankets with the lights off. Now, my windows were facing the forest, and I could see the shadows of the trees right in front of me, with the curtains slightly opened, and I got the strange but very real sensation that I was being watched. It was seriously overwhelming. I sunk lower into my bed. What happened next, I have no explanation for, but it was terrifying. I began to hear knocking and thumping noises on the window. Then screeching noises began to appear. Imagine someone dragging their fingernails down a wall. That's what it sounded like. Knowing that I was staying at a decently high level, with no balcony and no tree branches within 20 feet of the windows, this was not man-made. and I was praying like mad, begging the sound to go away. I don't know how I managed to fall asleep that night, but I did. Many years back, when I was in primary school, I used to spend my holidays at my grandma's in some ulu kampong, or remote village, in Malaysia. On the day I went back, it so happened that one of the villagers passed away. When I arrived, the whole village was involved in helping out with the funeral, and everything only ended in the evening. I'm someone who only sleeps comfortably in my own bed. If I go to another place, no matter how comfortable, I can't sleep tight. So that night, I was sleeping in the living room with a couple of others. I remember being one of the last asleep, and I woke up after 3 or 4 hours of sleep. So there I was, alone in the big and dark house, trying to doze off once again. If I recall correctly, it was around 2 or 3 a.m. Somehow, I fell asleep soon after, and again, after a short sleep, I woke up. This time, to a noise on the front door. I swear, on that night something was banging on the door so hard, it looked like it would rip the wooden door to pieces. And the thing was, that only I heard it. The people who were sleeping around me were still fast asleep. Even my grandma and my aunts, who are light sleepers, didn't wake up. I broke out into a cold sweat, trying my best to ignore what I heard. But come on, if someone knocks on your door lightly in the wee hours, you can't even sit still. How to sleep? The knocking went on for quite some time. I remember looking at the clock, praying hard that the sun would rise the next minute. But it was not to be, so I tried my best to sleep, or at least just to imagine I was sleeping. I couldn't take it anymore, and I woke up my mum. As usual, when a kid sees this kind of thing, adults brush them off. Somehow, I managed to sleep after that. I couldn't forget what happened that night. I can't explain it either. So 2 years later, I went back to the kampong village again. During one of the chit-chat sessions, we were talking about ghosts and stuff. So I related that story to my aunt who was living in that house. And guess what she said? She said she experienced the same thing. Very often, around dusk, 7 p.m, she would hear it. The exact same thing. Loud, violent banging on the front door. She opened the door once or twice, and no one was there. I don't know how she got the courage to do that, let alone live with them. It only happened to me once and I couldn't forget it. Anyway, if you live long enough in that village, you get immune to this stuff, I guess. That aunt of mine said she once saw a lady without legs, literally floating. And did my aunt run? Hell no. My current boyfriend related this tale to me. However true or false it may be, you can be the judge of it. So here goes. In higher education institutes, there are always on and off campus hostels provided for students who reside out of state. And this particular institute, located in Kuala Lumpur, is no exception. Students enroll in the institute, and non-locals normally rent the hostels provided for them. Before orientation week, the week before the commencement of their new university life, Tom was assigned to his room. It was known that students are to share their rooms with a roommate, and again, this was no exception. Orientation week is always busy, with students running around the campus, joining societies and befriending one another. Tom would always return to his room feeling exasperated and exhausted from his hourly runabouts. He would head for the showers and instantaneously hit the sack without a second thought, but not before bidding his roommate good night, to which the roommate would politely smile back. Morning came, and Tom would awake to find his roommate's bed unoccupied. Instead, he'd find him standing by the closed window, staring into the morning sky. Tom continued with his quick routine of the week, and they both bid goodbye. Then he'd head off to tend to his activities. Late evening after dinner, he returned to his dorm to find his roommate idling on the bed, seemingly in deep thought. Never giving it a second thought, Tom quickly rushed into the shower, preparing to retire for the night after another long day. The next day he awoke around the same time, and this time he found his roommate sitting in the same position as he had the night before. Once again being consumed with a hectic schedule during orientation week, he jumped out of bed, headed for the shower, and quickly dashed out of the room, both bidding one another their goodbyes. This went on for the whole week, with the same old greeting before heading out, and the same old bidding before he went to sleep. Then, orientation week ended. Tom was relieved and rejoiced a little, as he waited for his parents to arrive to visit him on their first weekend. When they arrived, he was excited, as he wanted to give his parents a little tour of his small but cozy room, and also to introduce his roommate to them. As they entered his room, he was bewildered to find that his room was unoccupied. His roommate wasn't there. This was the first time he hadn't seen him there. After a small tour, Tom approached the wing's wardens and asked if they had seen his roommate. Students who go in and out would have to pass by the warden's side. Questions as to who his roommate was were asked. For example, his name, his race, their dorm number. Upon asking for their dorm number and going through the campus database, the warden's expressions changed. They looked at Tom with a grim, questioning expression and blatantly told him that, other than Tom himself, there was no other occupant in this particular dorm. Baffled, Tom argued that they were crazy, as he had clearly seen his roommate occupying the room every day for the past week. But the wardens were adamant that he had been the only occupant in that room. Thinking back, Tom had his doubts now, as he vaguely remembered his roommate of 1 week. He remembers greeting him in the morning before leaving and returning to the room. He had seen him wandering around the room. He even bid him good night, even though the roommate was an exceptionally quiet person. They never really sat down to get to know each other. When he thought back, suspicions arose in his mind. He returned to his room only to find that the supposed belongings of his roommate were all gone. Perhaps they were never there to begin with. Within the same hour, Tom requested an abrupt change of room, and this time around, he made sure his new roommate was registered and accounted for. These stories were told to me by my mum. We have a relative who lives in a house on a hill somewhere near the King's Istana in Johor Bahru. The hill used to be a place where the Japanese conducted mass shootings during World War II. The house has many, many types of ghosts which haunt it, so these are just a couple of them. My cousin who lived in that house was about my age at the time. She had gone up to the attic to retrieve something. The attic was a big place and had 3 rooms. She opened the sliding door to one of the rooms to get her stuff, but she had the fright of her life when she did so. She saw a mysterious old lady sitting in a rocking chair. She had never seen that lady before, nor had the rest of the family. The lady began to turn her head around to look at her, but she fled before she could see more. I had always liked going to their house when I was very young, because I liked to play with the Barbie dollhouse in my cousin's room. I don't play with it now, especially after hearing what they had to say about it. At night, when my cousin is about to go to sleep, the furniture and dolls in the dollhouse would start to move around. She would just pray and pray until the things stopped. Another incident that occurred in the same room where she sleeps was when one evening, the maid was praying, They had 2 single beds which she was praying in front of. All of a sudden, a white figure appeared on one of the beds. The maid cleverly remained calm and continued to pray. After a while, the figure floated out of the window. Once, they had a problem with their kitchen staff. The pipe seemed to be jammed, so they called in a plumber. The plumber arrived shortly and prepared to do his job. Little did he know, the worst was going to come. He got his arm stuck in the pipe. Somehow, he just got it stuck, and his arm could not come out, even though the family members all tried to help him. After hours of struggling, they called in experts, such as firemen, to help solve it. But even they could not do so. Finally, his arm got free when they called in a bomo. One evening, the whole family was at home except my cousin. The maid, the father, the mother, and a toddler boy were doing their own stuff. The mother and toddler were in the living room. The maid was doing the dishes, facing a window, while the father was at the dining table doing his work. He was facing the maid's back. You know how you can get a reflection on the glass window if outside is dark and inside the house is lit? Well, the maid saw the mother walk behind the father and into the living room. The maid saw that through the reflection on the window. The woman was wearing red. Seeing the woman gone, she turned around, just out of curiosity, to ask her employer, "Was that ma'am who was walking behind you just now?" He seemed confused and did not know or notice anybody walking behind him. The maid got suspicious and went to the living room to check. The mother was there all right, playing with the toddler. But she was in a white t-shirt and jeans. There was clearly no other woman in the house, much less one wearing red. Then, on another night, the maid was lying on her bed in the maid's room. There were 2 children in the living room, whom she had to take care of while the rest of the family were away. Suddenly, a pocong appeared and started hopping around the place. She kept calm and only feared for the kids who were playing in the living room. The pocong then hopped out into the living room and past the children. The children were innocent and did not know what they were seeing, but being kids, they drew what they saw. After the pocong disappeared, adults came back and the maid reported the incident to them. The children showed what they drew to the adults, and it did show a pocong, a human-like figure wrapped up in white cloth. One strange incident happened to me when I was a baby. I was only about 2 months old at the time. My mother said she had brought me and the rest of the family to this house in the evening just to stop by on the way back to Singapore from Kuala Lumpur. As we all started to leave later at night, I began to cry continuously. She said I couldn't sleep for 3 consecutive nights after the visit. Creepy, huh? I haven't visited the house for a long time, so we haven't heard any of the latest incidents. If there are any, I'll be sure to tell you. I believe you guys have heard a lot of stories about how dirty Genting is, especially the hotels. Here are 2 stories to share with you about the hotels there. First World Hotel. My brother's friend, a pretty lady who looks like Shu Chi, went to Genting with her group of friends and decided to stay in First World Hotel. They separated into a few rooms, and she slept with 2 other girls. When she slept, she dreamt of herself sleeping on the bed. Suddenly, an old man appeared out of nowhere, climbed on top of her, and tried to assault her. He touched her, kissed her, and even tried to undress her. The only thing the poor girl could do was struggle and struggle. She thought that her actions angered the man, and he scratched her hand on her thigh. She continued to struggle, but in vain. All she could do was close her eyes and scream for help. Suddenly, she heard her friends calling out her name and opened her eyes. Her friends surrounded her and told her that They were sound asleep when they heard her screaming for help, so they tried to wake her up, but in vain. Then one of the girls said some prayers, while another friend kept calling her. Then she woke up. They realized that she had a nightmare and thought that it was just a dream, until they saw the scratch marks and the fingerprint marks on her thighs. And there was still some fresh blood on her thigh. Scared out of their wits, they quickly ran over to the guy's room and stayed the night there. Was it just a dream? Or was it more? No one knows. Theme Park Hotel. In 2004, I went to Genting with my group of friends. Me, my buddy, and two guy friends shared a big room that actually had 2 king-size beds in it. My buddy chose the inner bed, while the 2 guys got the outer bed. There was a door in between our 2 beds, as it was actually supposed to be 2 small rooms, but they made it into one big room instead. On the first night, we slept at around 2 a.m., but I suddenly awoke around 3 a.m. When I opened my eyes, I found the atmosphere a bit eerie, and the room seemed to be very icy. I looked at my buddy and found her still sleeping soundly, so I tried to brush away the uneasy feeling and tried to sleep again. Just when I closed my eyes, I heard some movement noise coming from my guy friend's side. We didn't close the door between us, but due to the hindering wall, I couldn't really see their bedroom from our bed position. I tried to listen carefully, and this time I was more certain that someone was walking around in the guy's side of the room. I quickly dove into my blanket and closed my eyes, trying to ignore the noise. Then I heard the movement noise getting closer and closer, and it stopped at the side of my bed. I then heard someone whisper something softly at my side. Not sure if it was a prank from the guys, I pulled down the blanket and opened my eyes immediately to see if it was them or not. But there was no one there. Nothing at all. Knowing for sure it was something supernatural, I quickly pulled up my blanket and pretended to sleep. Within a few seconds later, I heard the whisper again. It was still soft and unclear. Honestly, of course I was scared. I chanted the prayer of Guan Yin again and again. After a while the whispering stopped and everything seemed to go back to normal, and the room was not that icy. I was so tired by then, so I just chanted some more prayers and went back to sleep. The next day, around 9 a.m., I was the first to wake up, so I woke everyone else up. And my guy friend then realized one of the lights on their side was switched off, and so was their fan. But they remembered that they left it on, and they didn't even wake up in the middle of the night. I then told them what happened last night, but we decided to ignore it, as there wasn't much we could do. Nothing happened on the second and third nights. But then, on the last night, me, my buddy, and one of the guys decided to go back to the casino and play throughout the night. The other guy friend was so tired that he asked us to go ahead, and he fell asleep on the sofa next to their bed. When we returned with breakfast the next morning around 6 a.m., he was awake and asked us whether we came back to the room last night to search for stuff. We said no. Then he told us, after he fell asleep, he was awoken by banging noises from the girls' side of the room. After that, he heard plastic bag noises, like someone was searching through those bags of stuff that we had bought. He was so tired that he shouted, "Keep quiet, huh?" and went back to sleep. Luckily for him, nothing happened after that. A lot of people might have heard about the Pontianak, but have you ever heard of the ghost called Kum Kum? Kum Kum is a ghost that wanders in Malaysia and sometimes Singapore, searching for blood from young girls to regain her lost youth. How did she get her name, Kum Kum, you may ask? She was named Kum Kum because her deformed face affected her ability to say the proper greeting, Assalamualaikum. Instead, it came out as just a simple Kum Kum. Legend has it that she was once a beautiful woman, but was never satisfied with her looks. As time flew by, her beauty faded as she got older. In order to retain and restore her beauty, she consulted a bomo, a witch doctor, who practiced black magic. The bomo agreed to help her and gave her an elixir to drink, warning her not to look at a mirror for a month. Or was it a year? I can't remember. As time passed, whenever the woman touched her skin, she felt her wrinkles had disappeared, and her skin became softer and smoother, which tormented her with curiosity. People began complimenting her looks. On the 29th day, her curiosity got the better of her, and she sneaked a peek into the mirror. Suddenly the mirror cracked, and so did the woman's face. Within seconds, blisters, scars, and terrible features erupted onto her face. She became extremely hideous to behold. In desperation, she ran back to the bomo and begged him to help her regain her beauty. But sadly, the bomo told her that there was nothing more he could do. The only way to get back her beauty was to drink or spread the blood of young girls onto her face. And that was when the story of Kum Kum began. She attacks young girls to reclaim her beauty. So be cautious when leaving or returning home late at night. And never open the door if someone just knocks and greets Kum Kum. Because who knows if it might be Kum Kum or just a prankster. Hello watchers and listeners, thank you so much for watching. If you have a story to share, please send it to my email in the description below. This channel is mostly made up of stories sent in by viewers or people they know. Another way to support the channel is to sign up for my Patreon, where you can watch my videos ad-free. More perks will be added in the new year. Also, I will be adding new designs to the merch store, so keep an eye out for that. Thank you all for your continuous support. And remember,